before we jump into this video, if you'd like me to send you a free guide to capturing motion in low light situations, just look for this orange box over on the website, put your name, email address in it, hit send it, and I'll send you that free guide. Jared Polinfrono's Photo.com, and here we are once again at the end of one year and the beginning of another, which can only mean it's time for my 2022 predictions for the camera industry. But before I can make those predictions, let's take a quick look back at some of my predictions from last year, starting with the title of the video. The title was Canon EOS R1X, Nikon D900, Sony A9 III 2021 predictions. Now, I was 100% last year, 100% wrong, at least according to that title. Some of my predictions were on point, while others were close, and some were just totally off base, or honestly, too early. For example, I thought Nikon would bring a Z30, a crop sensor Z mount camera. Now, I was correct about Sony announcing the A7 IV, though I said it would have 2 CF Express A slots. It only has 1, and it's not 24 megapixels, nor does it shoot 20 frames silent or 12 frames per second mechanical. But hey, this is a prediction video. It's a time to toss some wild ideas out there and see what sticks. It turned out to be an interesting year for camera companies trying to deal with a lingering pandemic as well as a chip shortage. There were numerous delays of products, from cameras to lenses and everything else in between. But still, 2021 became the year of the flagship. Sony surprised us all with the A1 in January. Canon barely squeaked out the R3, though they don't consider it a flagship, and I do because it's $6,000. And then there's Nikon, a company who was desperately in need of a hit. They dropped their flagship Z9, a camera that shattered all of their previous pre-sale figures and is truly a must-buy for Nikon pros who stuck it out. That's why I consider it the year of the flagship. Even though there were plenty of other bodies and lenses released, these 3 flagships stole the show, in my opinion. So what will 2022 have in store for us? Now, I called 2021 the year of the flagship. I think 2022 will be the year of the crop sensor mirrorless camera. Now let's start with Nikon. Nikon currently has 2 crop sensor Z mount cameras. The Z50, which I still love sans the autofocus, and the ZFC, which is basically a Z50 in a retro body with the same AF limitations. I do want to give props to Nikon for having a unified mount like Sony, but unlike Canon. The Z50 and ZFC are cool cameras, but they aren't Walmart priced. What I mean by that is you can't walk into a box store and walk out with a mirrorless version of a D3500 kit. That's why I think Nikon will focus much of 2022 on entry-level mirrorless cameras, something like the Z30. All this camera really needs to do is work. Turn on, take photos, take videos, have okay autofocus, be able to easily connect to your phone, and have the ability to change lenses. Nikon needs an entry point back into the brand, and a lower-end mirrorless camera certainly can be it. They just need to make sure that there's inexpensive zoom lenses for people to purchase with their kit. Now, speaking of the kit, they need to offer a 2-lens kit with a body and possibly an SD card for around $699. But maybe they need to call Ashton Kutcher and see if he can help sell cameras once again. With Nikon bringing the Z9 to market in 2021, do I think we'll see a Z8 in 2022? No. Maybe we'll see a development announcement, but I can't see Nikon being able to ramp up production for both a Z9 and a Z8 in the same year. When the Z8 does arrive, though, I think Nikon will have a massive hit on their hands. The D850 is one of the most well-rounded DSLRs ever made. It's priced right, it has a great sensor, and a million pro lenses to choose from. A future Z8 has big shoes to fill, but Nikon can certainly pull it off. It probably will have a 61 megapixel BSI sensor with a great feeling body, 2 card slots, 1 CF Express B and 1 SD. It will have a Speed 7 processor, which will give you similar autofocus power to the Z9. But will it shoot as fast as the Z9? No, and it really doesn't have to. I do think it will be able to squeeze out 12 frames per second with the mechanical shutter, and probably the same in electronic shutter mode. Keep in mind it's not going to have a stacked sensor, so you're not going to be able to get 20 frames per second with a 61 megapixel sensor. I know Nikon has a few more lenses left in their roadmap, but I hope they get a few more 1.4s and 1.2s on there to keep the pros happy now that they have a reason to stay. I think Nikon's going to have a fantastic 2022 and can't wait to see what they do next now that they're not riding the pine any longer. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by Squarespace. If you're looking to build your very own online portfolio, use what I use because it's simple, easy, affordable, and you don't need to know coding. Head on over to squarespace.com/FronosPhoto to get your 14-day free trial. And if you decide that it's for you, use my code FronosPhoto at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Now, let's get back to predictions. Now let's move on to Canon. 2021 was a banner year for Canon. They continued to ride high off the success of the R5 and R6, which are still two solid choices for anyone jumping into the Canon ecosystem. On top of those two cameras, they finally officially dropped the R3 after teasing it for months. Even though they claim it's not their flagship, I will call it the flagship until something knocks it off its pedestal. The R3 is a pro's pro camera. And what I mean by that is if you're a sports shooter, a wire photographer, or pretty much anyone who's ever held onto a 1D style camera, the R3 will be perfect for you. With that being said, I do wish it had slightly more resolution. I mean, 24 is perfectly fine, but I've gotten spoiled by the A1's 50, the Z9's 45, and hell, even the R5's 45. And I know I'm not alone in that statement. I've talked to a lot of professional sports shooters who fell in love with the R5's 45 for sports because they love cropping. So will we see a true flagship from Canon in 2022? No. No, we will not. I don't think we'll see an R1 into the end of 2023 at this point. Like I said earlier, this is going to be the year of the mirrorless crop sensor cameras. Canon's already done a great job over the last 2 years with their full frame and RF glass lineup. Now it's time to turn their focus on unifying the RF mount with a new line of crop sensor cameras. The M6 line of cameras is actually really solid, but they've continued to fall short on the glass front. That's why we're about to see the M line morph into the R line. Just like Nikon going smaller and cheaper, I expect Canon to hit us with two different lower end models. One that replaces the M50 Mark II and one that replaces the M6 Mark II. Now I expect these cameras to keep basically all the same features as they're already great cameras. The only thing they will change will be the addition of an RF mount, which will lead to some redesigning of the bodies. It will also lead to more lower end RF glass making its way to the lineup. Canon's already started rolling out affordable RF glass, which I assume is in preparation for the mount unification, which I like the sound of that, unification. It sounds very sci-fi. Now it's wishlist time for Canon RF glass. Now if there's one company who can make some funky ass glass a reality, it's Canon. Let's see the F2 Hebrew Trinity get rolled out. We already have the 28-70 F2, but let's get a 14-24 F2 and something like a 70-135 F2. Now I know it sounds weird, but Tamron was able to make a 35-150 f2 to 2.8 for Sony, and that's kind of like the perfect range. But more in line with reality, let's see an 11-24 2.8, a 135 1.8 or possibly a 1.4, and some middle-of-the-road 1.4s and 1.8 lenses for people who can't afford or honestly don't need to drop bank on 1.2 lenses. I think Canon has put itself in a great position to continue to be successful in 2022 and beyond. Now, before I get to Sony, do I think Sigma and Tamron will bring us RF and Z-mount lenses? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say no. I want to see them do it, but I think that the chip shortage might delay this all until 2023. Though it would be highly beneficial for Nikon and Canon to work with third parties like Sigma and Tamron, like open up your lens mount information to them so they can build RF and Z glass, because guess what? You're gonna sell a lot of it, and it's gonna help you sell more bodies, which means you make more money. Can I say that Sony took a wait-and-see approach even though they released the best camera of 2021, if not the best camera ever with the A1? The answer to that question is yes. Kinda, and I'll explain in just a second. The A1 in January of 2021 was a shocker. Not only were there no leaks, but the day after it was announced, one showed up at the door with an awesome jacket for me, but not for Steven. They didn't send him one until a week later after we complained. The A1, what can I say? It's the camera that I personally use for all of my shoots. It's absolutely loaded. 50 megapixels and 30 frames per second RAW. It might not be built as Ford tough as the R3 or the Z9, but it's been out for an entire year and it still outshines the new kids on the block in many departments, thus why it's my current camera of choice. We finally got the A7 IV, though some people were underwhelmed, but I think it's one of the most well-rounded entry points into mirrorless photography. There was an interchangeable vlogging camera, a few camera phones, and a $9,000 drone that I personally don't care about and I'm not sure who does, along with a new 70-200 2.8 and a few other choice lenses. So why do I say that they took a wait-and-see approach? I say that because after the A1, what else did they need to prove this year? They beat Canon and Nikon by a year to the high-end punch. Hell, the R3 isn't even considered a flagship, but it does edge out Sony's A9 II. But then again, that's the A9 II, a second generation A9 that's been in photographers' hands since April of 2017. Sure, Canon and Nikon are catching up, but Sony now sees what the competition has to offer, and they know what features to focus on to meet or surpass them. For example, the A9 III could easily take out the R3, and there's not much Canon can do about it. 2022 will bring an A9 III with a new 30 megapixel stacked sensor, shoot up to 30 frames per second RAW, and add some other fancy tricks like 120 frames per second micro RAW compressed image files. I kind of made that one up, but we'll see what happens. 2022 will not bring an A1 II just yet. Like I said earlier, the A1 more than holds its own with the Z9, even though it's been out for an entire year. Sony now knows what the killer features of the Z9 are and can start to implement some of them into the A1 via firmware and others into a future new camera. Can anyone say sensor shield, as well as instant on and off? And what about 120 to 180 frames per second RAW? Sony's still in a great position, but Canon's AF certainly has caught up, if not surpassed them, and Nikon isn't as far behind as they once were. I'd personally like to see some more high-end, unique, professional glass from Sony. The 135 1.8 is my favorite portrait lens, but where's the Pro Macro? Where's the crazy fast zooms? Where's the 35 and 85 1.2? Sure, Sigma and Tamron have access to the E-mount, but I want native Sony glass. Sony's gonna join the crop sensor mirrorless party in 2022 by reinventing the A6000 design and lineup. It's time for a change. It's also time that they move the viewfinder back to where it belongs, you know, the middle of the camera. Other than that, Sony's gonna be Sony. They'll keep miniaturizing things as well as innovating. So what are your predictions for 2022? Do you think I was close or totally off base once again? Let me know down below. And thank you very much for watching Jared PolandFronosPhoto.com. See ya.